Welcome back to my channel, and in today's video, we're going to look at a game where we create a minority attack plan.
Yeah, hi to everyone. Today we're going to look at the position that was taken from the game of Tigran Petrosian and Rosetta Hector. So by the way, Tigran Petrosian is 9th world chess champion. And the game was played probably 62 years ago in 1958. Okay, so let's start. So today, as Tara said, we're going to talk about minority attack. Yeah, so today's topic is how to find a plan. So I think it's not a secret for chess players that finding a plan is a very important part of chess game. Yeah. And there are several things that you usually have to look on if you want to find and to create a good plan. So first of all, you have to to know if someone has any extra material. Yeah. We also have to look at the position of the kings, because, for example, if someone has a bad position of the king and the king is undefended, so of course, probably to start an attack against the king would be a good plan. It's also important to have a look at the position of your pieces, because if all your pieces are at the queen side, probably it's not the best plan to start any activities at the king side. So controlling of the open files is also important, and one of the most important things is the pawn structure. So if you know some typical pawn structures, it helps you to find a plan. And today you can see that we have Carlsbad pawn structure on the chessboard, and one of the possible plans for white in this position is a minority attack at the queen side. Yeah, it means that white has 3 pawns at the queen side, black has 4 pawns at the queen side, and white tries to attack the position at the queen side with 2 pawns. Okay, so probably we can start. So the typical
And
plan for
also,
minority attack is to play b5. Yes, Tara?
some attacks, it works if you go like gradually improving the position so that it's easier in the attack.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so minority attack means that white wants to play b5 and create a weak pawn on c6, a weakness. Yeah, so of course in this position, Petrosian played b4. Yeah, so his plan is to play b5. For black in this position, it's very good to play a6. So it's much better than to have a pawn on a7, because after a6 we trade a pawns and black has less weaknesses at the queen side. Okay, so now let's think about this position. So you see that right now b5 is not a good move because white just loses a pawn. So of course white has to play a4. But would it be good to play a4 in this position, or it's not so good? What
I
do you
don't
think, Tara?
think it's not that good in this position.
Yeah, because black has a bishop on a7 and it looks like
And
black
then,
just captures. Yeah. So we can't play a4 right now. Of course, white can spend some time on moving the rook to b1, for example. Or white can think how to move this bishop away from this diagonal, yeah? And the bishop will not attack the pawn on b4. So maybe for this, we can use e5 bishop.
yeah, and like if you're playing a game where you think your opponent is having a plan, then you want to think about how to defend that plan, or like creating a plan or creating another plan for your side.
Yes, of course. So usually it's good to destroy plans of your opponent, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a common mistake, especially for beginners, yeah, to trade bishops to the knights without any reasons. Yeah, you just don't know what to do in the position. So, okay, I can exchange pieces. So I just do this. So of course, it's not so good. And it depends. In some positions, bishops are stronger than knights. In some positions, knights could be better than bishops. So in this position, this exchange makes sense. Yeah, because you understand you want to use deflection. Yeah, you want this bishop stop attacking the pawn on before. So
You
that's
want to
why
like
we,
you want to like remove the defender,
yeah, of
like
course.
any key guarders of the king, and that will help you.
Yeah, and of course, like you don't want this bishop to attack your pawn anymore. So that's why this exchange makes sense and it's a good plan for white. So now white doesn't waste any time and plays a4 immediately in this position. Okay, so probably in this position, black can just continue development. So black plays bishop f5, yeah. We exchange pieces. Of course, black takes with a knight. And after this, white just plays b5, yeah. For black, it's good to capture. So because if black, for some reason, I don't know, let's make just, for example, h6 move, yeah. So if black doesn't take the pawn on b5, now black has two weaknesses, a6 and c6 pawns, yeah. So for black, of course, it's better to have just one weakness. So that's why black trades, yeah. So what would you do after this? So probably we can move the queen somewhere, yeah. So we can play queen d6. Black allows white to capture, so it's better to have a pawn on c6, yeah, just one weak sync at the queen side.
And
And
also
now let's
getting
think, yeah.
and also getting your queen out.
Yeah, of course. And now let's think how white can improve this position. So of course, like white has a plan to attack the sixth pawn. Yeah, but it's very important in the middle game to improve position of your pieces. Yeah, and I think that after this pawn trading, white has a very good square for the pieces. Yeah, at the queen side. So what do you think? What the square is it?
I also think that white's trying to gain the space so they can continue their attack.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, and maybe we can improve position of this knight. So I think that d4
maybe,
pawn helps us with
yeah,
this.
maybe knight to a4.
Yeah, so of course, white plays knight a4, yeah, so don't think that moving your pieces at the side of the chessboard is always a bad idea, yeah, so
And
in chess
sometimes,
there are a lot of exceptions to the rules,
yeah,
yeah, so we have a plan. And yeah, that's why knight a4 is a good plan, because c5, it's a very good place for white pieces, especially for the knight. It looks like an outpost, yeah.
yeah,
So of course, knight a4 was played with idea to play knight c5 then. Okay, so black plays rook to b8. Yeah, and now it's time to move the knight to c5. Maybe it would be good for us, yeah, and for people who watch your channel to refresh the meaning of an outpost. Yeah,
yeah.
so it should be an open or half open file. Yeah, so for white, C file looks like a half open file. So is it important that an outpost is defended by a pawn?
Yes, because it helps you support it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and is it important to have an outpost like at the territory of your opponent? Yeah, so it's a fifth rank. Yeah, it looks like it more like black's territory, not white's. Yeah. So I mean, like, for example, c4, b4, e4, it wouldn't be an outpost, yeah, because it's like at the white's territory in this position. So it
The
could be for
outpost
white.
is,
Fifth
and the
rank,
outpost
sixth
is
rank.
helping you get closer to their position.
Yeah,
With their
of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Okay, so knight c5, and in this position, black played queen s7. So as Tara said before, it's important not just to find a plan by yourself, but also try to understand what is the plan of your opponent. Yeah, so for example, queen s7, this move is a nice example that gives us a clue to understand what does black want to do. So of course, not just black, but also white has some weak squares in this position. Yes, Tara?
And it's not
Mhm.
only about your plan, it's also about finding what your opponent's going to do
Mm-hmm.
because they might have some tactics that you might have not seen if you didn't look at their position.
Yeah, of course, you're right. Yeah. So let's think why the queen moved away from d6 to e7. So what is the plan? Maybe black has some plans for the knight? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that they have plans with their knight.
Yeah, so probably black has a plan to play knight d6 and then to move it to c4 and
And you saw
somehow
that,
to block this file for white. Yeah?
yeah, and you saw that you couldn't play that in that position because in the previous move because the queen was there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So of course, if white finds this plan for black, white should try to destroy it. Yeah, and so what can we do? We can change position for the knight on c5 because I think that white can also think about e5. It looks like a very good square for the knight. Yeah, so that's why white plays knight d3. Now the queen is attacking the pawn, and probably it's not so good for black to play knight d6. So we just capture the pawn, right? So this is how white tries to destroy black's plan. And by the way, from e5, yeah, the white knight will also attack the pawn on c6. So it's very good for white. So now black has to defend the sixth pawn. Yes, so I think that black played queen to b7, right? So queen goes to b7, and now we move the knight to e5. Yeah, so probably this bishop is not better than the knight, so black decided to trade the bishop to the knight. Of course, we capture with the knight, yeah, and you see that there are two white pieces that are taking the pawn on c6. And of course, in position like this, white should keep like c5 square, yeah, because if black can play c5, so it wouldn't be good for white. So black shouldn't be able to push the pawn to c5, right? So it's also a very important detail of minority attack plan. Yeah. Okay, so probably in this position, black has to exchange rooks. Yeah, and now this knight, instead of like getting a very good position and get to c4, the knight has to defend the pawn on c6. So you see black has to move the pieces back to the 7th rank. So knight e7. So in this position, white can try to just to improve position, yeah. So
Yeah,
g3 was
and
played.
some of the pieces there, like with both of the knights, they were part of maneuvering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
To,
you're right. Yeah. So g3, yeah, probably later white can try to push the pawns at the king side, but of course white just doesn't want to be checkmated at the first rank. So g3 is kind of prophylactic. Yeah, so black plays queen b2, and black wants to trade queens. So what do you think, Tara? In this position, is it good for white to trade queens, or for white it would be better to save the queens on the chessboard?
I think it's better to save the queens
Yeah, I,
because
I think
they're
that.
because if you take, then the rook will be on your second rank.
Yeah, and I think that in this position, white has all chances to attack. Yeah, and usually when you have an attack or if you plan to start an attack, it's better for you to save the queens at the chessboard. Yeah. So,
And
and I think that
your
maybe white
opponent,
will try to use weaknesses at the king side.
yeah,
Yeah.
and your opponent wants to trade pieces to make your attack.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So for black, it's better to have less pieces on the chessboard. So queen goes to d1, yeah, because white also has to defend the rook that stays on a1. Yeah, and in this position, Petrosian's opponent made a mistake, so he played h5. Of course, black shouldn't do this because like now black has more weaknesses at the king side. Yeah.
And you can see they're all on the light squares,
Mm-hmm.
all of the pawns.
Yeah. So now the dark squares are weak.
And also
So
for And for white, they're all on the dark squares.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right.
And sometimes it's about knowing where the pawns are placed, because sometimes it can make the king weaker. And if you
Yes,
find
of
that,
course.
that can help you.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So of course, in this position, white doesn't forget about the pawn. Yeah. So where should he move the white rook? So how can you attack c6 pawn in this position?
You can go rook to c1.
Yeah, of course. So you play rook to c1, attack the pawn. Yeah, black has to defend it. Yeah. And just this position is nice for white because white has a choice. So white
And
like
white's
still
trying to,
can.
and white's trying to make black not have any good moves
Mhm.
to
Yeah, of
create their
course.
own plans.
Yeah, so white's still able to make problems at the queen side, but at the same time, white wants to start making problems and starting an attack at the king side. Yeah, so as we said before, h5 wasn't the correct move for black in this position. So that's why white plays h3. So what do you think? What is the plan? For what did white move the pawn to h3?
So I think the plan of playing h3 is g4.
Yeah, of course. So white wants to play g4. So king goes to g7. White also wants to move the king away from the first rank. Yeah, so the king goes to g2. So queen a3. Yes, some interesting moves. Yeah, at the queen side. So white moves the rook, black moves the queen. So queen b2, g4 captures. So of course white captures with a pawn. Yeah, so probably later white is gonna play g5. Yeah, so just weak dark squares. So the black rook goes to b7, rook goes to
And
c5.
here it's about this position, like if they have a weakness, how are you going to attack the weakness?
Yeah, and also it's a nice example because white doesn't have many pieces. Yeah, so just like it's an attack with like several pieces on the chessboard. So you should be very good in it. Yeah, so it's not so easy. So just a nice example. So queen goes to b5, and after this move, it looks like black pieces can't move anywhere, so they just have to defend the pawn on c6. Yeah, so good for white because
They're
white
like
pieces,
tied to the position. They're
yeah.
tied to those positions.
hmm Yeah, so probably white is going to move the queen to f3 or even to g4, yeah, if the pawn moves to g5. So this knight is on a nice position. It's attacking both sides of the chessboard, yeah? c6, g6, f7. So one more example why it's good to have a knight at the center, yeah?
Yeah,
Okay,
and it's also
so
good if you want the attack, how we're going to get your pieces to good squares, which is what white did here with the knight.
yeah, you're right, thank you. Yeah, so now we have to move the white queen to the king side. Yeah, so queen goes to f3. So white is attacking the pawn. And again, it's a problem for black. So the knight is blocking the seventh rank for the black rook. Yeah, but at the same time, the knight is attacking c6. So black can't move this knight away. Yeah, so black plays f6. And in this position, white made a very interesting move. So white is ready to sacrifice the knight. Yeah. So again, a nice
Also,
example of
I
weaknesses
also
at the
have to
dark squares.
I also have to say that if you see that your opponent has good pieces, and how you're going to kick away those pieces without trying to weaken your king.
Yeah. So white made a nice move. Yeah, white is ready to sacrifice the knight. So g5 was played in this position. Let's think together, would it be good for black to capture the knight? So because I think that white has checkmate in several moves. So what would you do for white in this position?
Maybe queen to f6.
Yeah, okay, so queen f6, king g8, yeah? So, and now what we can do in this position?
Rook to h1.
Yeah. Okay, so rook goes to h1, and to be honest, I don't see how black can avoid checkmate on h8, yeah? So, but black can also try to play knight f5 in this position. So let's think what happens after knight f5. So is it good or it's not?
Let's see what might happen. So maybe then pawn takes f6.
Okay, let's try. So what if the king captures?
Then
So I think that now we can also have a look at the queen
yeah,
side. Yeah.
rook takes c6.
Yeah, so I think that then we get the pawn on g6 with the rook. Yeah, so nothing good for black. Yeah, and probably if black plays f5 in this position again, weak dark squares. Yeah, so I think that white is gonna play queen h3, queen goes to h6, and I don't know how black is gonna save the pawn on g6. Yeah, we always can use this file for the queen and for the rook. So just, you see, white doesn't have any extra material, but for black it's very difficult to defend this position. Yeah, so in this position, black played, yeah, knight f5. So this is what happened. Captures, yeah, rook takes c6, king goes to e7, and in this position, so Petrosian just played queen f4. So probably his plan is to move the queen to g5 in this position. Yeah, and so nothing good
Very strong position.
for black. Yeah, so knight can capture the rook. So just a very good position. Yeah. So as you can see, in this position, probably rook g6 would be a blunder. Yeah, because black has knight h4. Yeah. So again, even if you think that your position is absolutely winning, so you should be careful because probably your opponent has some some possibilities. Yeah. So just don't let your opponent to use them. Yeah. Okay, so after queen f4, the game is over. Yeah,
And
so it was a nice example of minority attack. Yeah, and of how you can create a plan, how it's important to think about plans of your opponent and to destroy them. Yeah, so maybe next time we can continue talking about plans, yeah, about different pawn structures and about like moments of a chess game that can help us to find a good plan for ourselves.
yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video to others. And I'll
Yeah,
see you in my next video. Bye!
bye bye.